Hi, I'm Chao-Wei Hwang from the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and Frederick Health Hospital. We don't routinely do coronary thrombectomy these days anymore, but occasionally it can still be useful. We're going to talk about a recent case of left main STEMI in which thrombectomy turned out to be the key. So our patient is a 55-year-old woman with the usual risk factors and prior PCI of her circumflex. She was brought into our ED by her daughter with severe chest pain, and she looked absolutely terrible. ECG showed obvious anterolateral ST elevations, and we were activated. So we came downstairs, and shortly after we showed up, her eyes rolled back and she arrested. She was in VF. We did chest compressions. She was shocked. She got 2 rounds of ACLS medications. We got ROSC in about 6 minutes and rocketed her up into the cath lab. When we got her to the lab, she arrested again, and this time she was in PEA. She got more chest compressions, another round of ACLS medications. We started norepinephrine, and we eventually got ROSC within about 3 minutes. And here is her cath. You see a large thrombus that extends from the middle of the left main into the proximal part of her stent in the circumflex. The LED is spared. So, what do I do with this? She was teetering on the edge, and I did not want to do anything that could cause global no reflow. If that thrombus were to break up, embolize everywhere, and completely clog both the LED and the circumflex, we were not going to get her back. My first thought was to aspirate it. That would certainly make a lot of sense. But remember, the total trial showed no benefit and possible excess strokes for aspiration thrombectomy. In patients with STEMI, guidelines clearly state that routine aspiration thrombectomy is not useful, a class 3 recommendation. So what are my other options? Well, balloon angioplasty, of course, but that could cause the exact thing that I was worried about, an embolic shower and global no reflow. What about direct stenting? I'm not normally a fan of direct stenting, but in this case, direct stenting is probably a better option than just plain angioplasty because the stent mesh itself could act as a crude embolic protection device. In fact, the M-Guard stent uses this exact idea. It has a dense micronet sleeve that reduces embolization, and it showed favorable results in the master trial. And unfortunately, this device is not FDA approved, not available in the US, and was certainly not available at our community lab. What about stent retrievers? These stent-like devices are deployed in the thrombus, attached to the thrombus, and are then retrieved, which then removes the thrombus. The Retrieve AMI trial that just came out in 2025 showed encouraging results in STEMI patients with large thrombus burdens, but the trial was small and more a safety and feasibility trial. And more importantly for me right now, we don't have stent retrievers at our community lab. So I decided to go for thrombectomy anyway. I felt that this was not a routine thrombectomy case. But instead of just manual aspiration thrombectomy, I decided to use the Penumbra Cat RX device. The main issue with manual aspiration is that the system loses vacuum fairly quickly during aspiration. And my personal theory, which is definitely not evidence-based, is that loss of vacuum during retrieval of the aspiration catheter can cause part of the aspirated thrombus to embolize, possibly to the brain, resulting in the signal for more strokes that was seen in the total trial. The Penumbra system gets around this issue by providing a continuously strong vacuum and more steady aspiration force. And this continuous aspiration throughout the thrombectomy process should lower the risk of embolization and stroke. Penumbra's Cheetah study in 2023 was a non-randomized safety study, but it did show it did show promise with lower rates of distal embolization and high rates of flow restoration. There were 3 strokes out of 400 patients, but those occurred days after the procedure and were adjudicated to be unrelated to the thrombectomy procedure. So it's a fairly straightforward device to use. The Penumbra catheter goes over your standard workhorse 014 wire. And as soon as you reach the tip of your guide catheter, remember to turn on the vacuum. The idea is to advance the penumbra catheter into the coronary with the vacuum on so that any thrombotic debris that you might inadvertently dislodge gets immediately aspirated. You're going to advance the penumbra catheter very slowly, around 1 millimeter per second, until you get to the proximal face of the thrombus, and then let the catheter sit there for 30 seconds with continuous aspiration. When you're ready to remove the penumbra, remember to keep the vacuum on as you're withdrawing the catheter and leave it on until after the penumbra is completely out of the guide catheter. This is very important as the continuous vacuum will prevent aspirated thrombus from being dislodged and embolized during the catheter removal process. I actually usually aspirate the catheter one more time after removing the penumbra for an added safety margin. We did a couple of runs of the penumbra, and here is what we had. The thrombus is still there, but does look better. And thankfully, we did not have no reflow. There was no significant embolization, and the LED remained spared and open. Okay, so what next? I decided to stent this directly with a 4.5 by 22 millimeter DES from the left main into the circumflex. As I said earlier, I'm not usually a fan of direct stenting, but in this case, with the residual thrombus, the stent mesh itself acts as a crude embolic protection device. Now, a couple of tips for stenting a thrombotic lesion. I generally choose a longer stent than normal to cover any proximal or distal squirting of the thrombus during stent deployment. To further minimize this, I try not to oversize or aggressively post-dilate. And in these scenarios, you might actually consider not post-dilating at all and instead rely on IVUS or OCT to right-size the stent from the get-go. Here is our result after stenting. It actually looked pretty good. IVUS showed excellent stent sizing and apposition, so I decided not to balloon this any further. The LED still looked good and the ostium was not pinched, so I decided to leave that alone as well. And here is the final result, which we thought was quite satisfactory. Her right femoral artery was too small for impella, so we placed a balloon pump. She ended up having a very rocky hospital course. She had cardiogenic shock, suffered an ischemic limb, acute liver injury, acute kidney injury, but she survived. And after a couple of weeks, she walked out of the hospital. All right, take-home messages. Routine aspiration thrombectomy is a class 3 recommendation. It is not useful in patients with STEMI. However, as this case shows, bailout thrombectomy is still useful in the right patients, such as those with large thrombus burdens and high risk of catastrophic embolization or no reflow. We discussed the Penumbra Cat RX device and the theoretical advantages of continuous high vacuum for lowering the risk of distal embolization. We also discussed the use of direct stenting in vessels with high residual thrombus, as the stent itself can act as a crude embolic protection device. Remember to choose longer stents to cover any longitudinal squirting of the thrombus and avoid oversizing or aggressively post-dilating. Thank you for watching.